Occlusion training, or blood flow restriction training, is said to help speed the process of muscle growth by slowing venous return, therefore holding the pump in the muscles and thus enhancing hypertrophy. Is this a newfound secret, or is this potentially a dangerous gimmick? That's exactly what I decided to find out. This is my 1-week journey trying occlusion training. But you gotta focus. So I just bought some basic occlusion bands off of Amazon. They came in a pack of 4, 2 smaller occlusion bands for the arms and 2 bands for the legs. The bands were very simple, just an adjustable stretchy band essentially. Now according to the studies, when occlusion training was done correctly by healthy individuals, the risk was little to none. Now according to the instructions that came with these occlusion bands, the safe level of tightness for the bands was a 7 out of 10 perceived tightness. While that statement is pretty arbitrary, I figured you just want them tight enough to slow the blood flow back from the muscles, but not tight enough to prevent blood flow to the muscles or too tight to cause numbness. So pretty much just a light squeeze. So adjusting the bands for that 7 out of 10 comfortable tightness was easy enough, and it felt exactly like you would think. With that being said, I was just testing it out, and it's only recommended you wear occlusion bands for 10 to 20 minutes at a time while working out. So I took these back off and we headed to the gym to do our first upper body workout. So on day 1, I decided to start with just a few compound upper body movements without the occlusion bands. Now I wanted to try high rep occlusion training for my first exercise, the bicep curl. Based on my research, it was recommended you choose a maximum of 20% of your 1 rep max for this high rep occlusion training. This might seem super light, but not when you consider doing sets of 75 with only 30 seconds of rest between each set. As you can imagine, the first 30 reps felt in fact too easy. But by rep 60, it felt like my arms were going to explode. It felt pretty much like you would expect, like a super pump with increased vascularity. Now, only being able to rest for 30 seconds is where it really got difficult. Upon the second set, by about rep 30, it started to burn. And the feeling of the pump was at a whole another level. Vascularity was significantly increased, and honestly my arms felt like they looked bigger than they ever have, even with a pump from previous workouts. Literally an RPE of 9.5 on the last set. Now I took the occlusion bands off for a second, and it actually felt like the pump was sticking around, like it didn't just immediately disappear. Popping them back on, moving to my second exercise with the occlusion bands, tricep rope pull downs. Doing the same protocol, 75 repetitions per set with only 30 seconds of rest between each set. Trying to use good form, a very similar feeling to the bicep curls. The first 60 or so reps pretty easy, then it started to feel like my arms were filling up quickly, then it started to burn, only 30 seconds of rest, really kept the burn going, and by the last set the intensity was an RPE of like 9.5. But dang, the pump felt insane.
We just got done doing the first workout with the occlusion bands, and we did arms. That's right, we only did 2 exercises with these things. We only did bicep curls, and then we did tricep pushdowns with the ropes. Like by rep 20, I was like, oh, this is gonna be too easy. But then by rep like 60, it was like, oh my gosh. And then the second set, because there's only 30 seconds of rest, pretty nuts. But what I did notice is it felt like my pump was maybe bigger than it usually gets. I don't know, it kind of, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say.
And it felt like it's still there. Like it feels like it's even still there now after taking these things off. So, dang, yeah, like, so those are just my initial impressions so far. See in a minute.
The next day, as you can imagine, my biceps were pretty darn sore.
So my biceps are like so sore. Oh boy. Yeah. Maybe it's working.
That's okay, because today was supposed to be a leg-based training day. Now, according to my research, another form of occlusion training that can help target muscular strength and explosiveness is going at approximately 40% of your 1 rep max with the occlusion bands. And that's pretty much what I decided to do for my first leg exercise. Placing the bands at about a 7 out of 10 tightness around the upper thighs, and then keeping my first exercise, the back squat, at about 40% of my 1 rep max. Now, I was only able to do about 10 reps before it started to feel just kind of weird. Now, looking in the mirror, it did look like it was actually keeping the blood trapped in my legs, and they did actually look more pumped than they usually get, but there was just a weird feeling about this exercise, almost like my feet kind of going numb, but not really, Just an uncanny feeling. It's hard to explain, but it just didn't feel right. So I actually decided to switch back to high repetition occlusion training with isolation leg movements. Just doing basic extensions with super light weight, followed by hamstring curls. And just like the previous day, it was a ton of reps and the burn was unreal. Now finishing up with seated calf raises, I actually moved the bands lower just above the knee to help really isolate the blood in the calves. And after about 75 reps and really feeling the burn and the squeeze, it felt like my calves were filling up with blood more than they ever have before. In fact, I even got this little vein right here. But for real, the pump on the calves was unreal. 3 sets of 75. At the end, RPE of like 9.5. And look at that vein starting to even split. Oh man.
My legs are like so fatigued and sore right now. Just trying to loosen them up on the trampoline. Anyways, my arms are still sore, surprisingly. However, we gotta stay on schedule. We're gonna do an upper body weight workout today using the occlusion bands. Let's see how this goes.
So moving to our first bodyweight workout, we decided to put the occlusion bands on right from the get-go. Starting off with push-ups to maximize the reps. First we went straight from normal push-ups to the knees, then we threw this resistance band around my pull-up bar so that I could do assisted push-ups and increase the reps to 75 on the first set.
30 seconds of rest is just like killing me.
With only 30 seconds of rest, the second set of push-ups had to be done on an incline. This was actually still extremely hard and I was only able to knock out 50 repetitions before I had to stop. When I was finally done, my arms looked swollen. Like not just swole, but swollen. Something to note is it did look like there was less vascularity as compared to doing just a simple isolation exercise. Moving to our second exercise, decline pull-ups. After about rep 20, I felt extremely fatigued and had to switch to an assisted decline pull-up with the resistance band, which even then got significantly hard. Trying my best to maintain good form and really get the squeeze, I ran into a little problem.
It's like, oh gosh, it's chafing. Oh, it's probably because the buckle's on the inside. Gosh, dude. The pump though.
So finishing up all those repetitions with the decline pull-ups was absolutely exhausting, and I decided to move the occlusion bands to the upper part of the forearm and try some hanging. Initially for this exercise, it didn't feel like it was doing much until about the last 20 seconds before failure. It felt like it was really starting to restrict that blood flow and enhance the vascularity post-hang. So I actually decided to try something a little bit different for the last exercise and move the occlusion bands above the shoulders. Now I decided to use weights for this, the 2.5s, and do lateral raises. 75 reps, 3 sets, only 30 seconds of rest between each set. And dang, let me tell you, the pump in the shoulders was unreal. But, as you may have been thinking throughout this video, is this due to the occlusion bands? Or is this due to the high repetition training? Well, just based on the feeling, it felt like the high repetition training was causing the pump, but the occlusion bands were helping keep the pump. On day 4, we decided to do a lower body weight workout with the occlusion bands, going for that high rep training. After the first set with only 30 seconds of rest, having to move to assisted squats using a resistance band, dang, let me tell you that pump felt insane. First, my legs started to look super pumped and bigger than they ever have before. And then by the final set, the pump started to, what I like to call, spill over, and my legs just started to look swollen.
Oh, I just feel swollen.
Moving to assisted Bulgarian split squats, I just have to be honest, I was only able to knock out 25 reps with each leg for 3 sets. My legs just felt so pumped, swollen, and fatigued from the first exercise. It was all I was able to do. Lowering the occlusion bands to right above the knee, moving on to calf raises, doing 75 reps, 30 seconds of rest between each set. It really felt like it was helping get the calves pumped up. The calves felt like they were getting super tight, and it felt like they were going to look bigger than they ever have before. But upon looking at the calves, they actually didn't look much bigger. It seemed like the seated calf raises from the previous day did a better job at pumping them up. And then looking at the mirror, I realized my upper thighs were still extremely swollen.
Man, they're so fat.
Maybe they were holding all the pump.
So it is day 5 right now, and I've got to say, my whole body's pretty sore, but nothing on my body is sore to the point where like it hasn't been sore before, except for my biceps, specifically like right in the middle of the muscle. Now this was pretty sore after day 1 too, but it's like it compounded after I did the body weight workout, upper body, and now it's just like super sore. So yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know, is this soreness because of the occlusion bands or is it because of the high rep training? Other than a brisk walk we're taking today off, hopefully we're good enough for tomorrow because I do want to train arms at least one more time before this week challenge is up to just maximize. So yeah,
Could this ultimately actually be a good thing and be causing my biceps to grow, or was this just an annoying soreness? We still had a few days left to maximize our occlusion training, but on day 5 we decided just to do a low intensity recovery based workout of just walking 1 mile on the treadmill, but using the occlusion bands to help keep the pump in the calves. Days 6 and 7 we started with some basic compound exercises before we jumped into solely occlusion training. On day 6 we focused the occlusion training on the upper body, starting with 2 sets of 25 plate curls followed immediately by 25 reverse dumbbell curls followed immediately by 25 reverse curls for 75 total reps. Basically trying to change it up but pushing the high reps to failure. For the second exercise, we decided to do a drop set with skull crushers, doing as many reps as possible, starting with the barbell, followed by 2 dumbbells, followed by 1 dumbbell until we reached a total of 75 repetitions. We were only able to do 2 sets, and keep in mind we only rested 30 seconds between each and every one of these sets. Once again, the pump looking absolutely unreal for me. My muscles seem to be holding all of that volume. But was this just temporary, or would this enhanced pump lead to some permanent results? Hopefully we would see that in a couple of days. For the finishing exercise, I actually moved the occlusion bands back around the shoulders and decided to do 3 sets of 75 repetitions of lateral raises. I feel like from the previous day where we did this exercise with the occlusion bands, I've never had a better shoulder pump, so I figured why not throw in another session before this experiment's over. Being super sore in the upper body on day 7 and still somewhat sore in the lower body on day 7, we decided to throw occlusion training in for only 1 exercise to finish this up, and that was a seated calf raise. I felt like with the standing calf raise while using the occlusion band, it just didn't really lead to that good of a result, or at least an immediate result, but the seated calf raise that we did in the gym prior seemed to provide me with a better pump in the calves, at least more vascularity, so I wanted to mimic that at home with this simple setup that I did right here. 75 repetitions, 3 sets, only 30 seconds of rest between each set. So just finished up the final set. I'm gonna take a shower, I'm gonna shave now, and then I'm gonna take 48 hours off to hopefully recover, and hopefully then we can come back with some positive results. Did this occlusion band training work? Let's find out. So did occlusion training actually work? Let's look at the results. At first glance, it appears like after only 1 week of doing this BFR training, we added approximately a 1/4 inch to each arm, from 15 inches to almost 15.25 inches in circumference for the right and the left arm. Looking at the calves, nothing. And then also looking at the thighs, I did not put this in the beginning, but my thighs were 24 inches approximately in circumference, and at the end they're also 24 inches as well in circumference. Now looking at perceived vascularity, comparing the before and after, it doesn't look like there's much vascularity, but that 1/4 inch we added to the arms, what the heck is going on there? Was this due to occlusion training? I mean, a 1/4 inch in only a week, that is pretty sufficient. So this is just my opinion after doing this for a week. I am not certain that 1/4 inch is due to the occlusion bands or causing that blood flow restriction to that 7 out of 10 scale. I think maybe that 1/4 inch is more likely inflammation from doing those high rep training splits that I am not used to doing really at all ever until this experiment. I think by doing those high rep sets of 75 reps with only 30 seconds of rest between each set really challenged my muscles in a new way, especially my biceps. Like, they were so sore, more sore than they've ever been before. But also on top of that, maybe there is some semi-permanent hypertrophy going on there. If I would keep up with this super high repetition training, maybe that would stay and maybe we would get a little bit more gains going on. Maybe I should do that. I'm not certain the occlusion training did much more than allow me to keep the pump in my muscles for longer. Obviously, it has been maybe too short of a time to tell. One thing I do have to say though that may be a good use of these bands is perhaps in rehab, but I ran into some research suggesting that wearing occlusion bands while going through rehab or on an area that you can't or you're not supposed to lift to your normal training weight, the occlusion bands can help keep the muscle in that region rather than that muscle wasting away from not training or not lifting to the intensity that that person was lifting before they got injured or before they had to go to rehab. Yeah, little side rant. Everyone who's a scientist out there, you're looking at these studies and you're trying to compile everything. All the time, guys, there's a study that says this, and there's a study that says that, and then at the end of all these studies it says maybe, 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 and then it's like, oh, this study was sponsored by this. So you always have to take these studies with a grain of salt as well, but just using common sense and trying to think about it logically, possibly there are some benefits. With that being said, if you guys are interested in my bodyweight training program, Bodyweight Beast 2.0, go to onlykindsfitness.com, check that out. Train with your body weight virtually anywhere. It's a 12-week program. Stay tuned, more challenge videos coming out. It's gonna get crazy. Next week's gonna be nuts. I hope you guys are ready for this. Hope you all have a great day. Peace. I will see you all in the next video.